Okay, now that we've learned a little bit about intents, let's see if we can write a test for it. So I was looking at this. So there's this library that's part of Espresso, which is all about intents and working with intents. So it allows you to capture the intent that is fired by your activity, and I guess interrogate it and verify that it's doing the right thing. So I guess you need to add some more libraries. So you need to add this Espresso intents to your app.Gradle. There we go. Dependencies, their test implementation. And yes, please sync now. Interesting enough, it needs this intents test rule in your here. So it actually is intents test rule is a subclass of, let's import that. Is that a subclass of activity test rule? It is good, so I can just place that here. Let's just see if this still works with the intents test rule. Oh, someone taught me a neat trick. You know how I'm always complaining about how I have to launch the, I also click yes, please launch that one particular emulator. Well, if I say I also always want to go to the emulator, I always want to target the Pixel 2, it ought to do that now for this configuration. So now when I run it again, it shouldn't, did it. Yay.
Wait, edit configuration?
Yep.
All right, cool, got it.
Edit configurations. Oh yeah, it's so much nicer. Great. Looks like, oh, it started up. And was it happy? That test result. Yep, test pass. Yay! Okay, so that was all happy. That's good. Okay, now let's read about how we can use this intents test rule. So it comes with some built-in intent matchers to basically get the intent and then do stuff with it. So you can say, hey, assert that the intent has this particular action, or hey, has this URI, or has this stuff in its extras, which is what we want. And so here's, see here. So then so we say we perform some operation, like clicking on a view. So actually, I kind of like that. So your user action results in an external phone being activity being launched. Right. So let's see here. So our test is going to be clicking on double number button, fires intent. So the first thing we need to do is click on the button. So user dot click. Oh wait a second. What's this user thing? Sorry, is there a complete action down there? Oh, here we go. On view, yeah. On view. Another thing you can do, instead of with text, you can just get the ID. So r.id.double button. What was it? It's called button. Can't remember. So we'll go get the oh, it doesn't have one. Well, let's add an ID so that we can identify it more easy. This will be double number. Good. Now does it have it over here? Double number. Nice. Oh, sorry, with ID. Yes. And then, sorry, perform click. What does the API look like? Yeah, perform click. Nice. And then, okay, so that will click the button. And now we want intending. Intended? It was intending. Stubbing. Write a stub response for activities that are launched with the that. No, we don't really want that. We want to capture it. So I think we want intended. How do we capture that? Intended, intending for intent validation and stubbing. I want intent validation. Both take a blah 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 as a. Oh, I see. So I say intended. What does that take? A matcher intent. Okay. Yeah, I don't understand how that's used exactly. This is something that captures it? No, this is a matcher. So the given matcher matches the specified number of intents sent by the application. That's not really what I want. I want to be able to capture it so I can do stuff like this. Did I miss something here? So I need that. So special intents provide the ability to intercept outgoing intents based on certain matching criteria, which we find using blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't want to write a custom matcher. Validation. So both take a blah. So how do I get one of those? Here's a big example, intending. Okay, let's see if this example can tell me. Yay. Oops. There we go. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, so you can say intended, and you can say all of, and then all of the matchers. Okay, we'll try that. Wait, received intent. Verify the intent of the dialer was sent to the correct action. I kind of like this thing better. I like that style. So that intents.getIntents. Oh. So wait a second, do I have one of these? Intents.getIntents. Okay, and this returns a list. Oops, didn't want that. Apologize. Get 0. Intent is that, and now I can do all those assertions that I want to do. Say assert that. Now intent. Oops. Right. Assert that. I understand, where is that imported? Yeah, view matchers, okay. Oh, that's interesting. So where I'm a little confused right now is that I see this example here where I can do stuff like assert that intent.has action, but yet the intent, the assert that method doesn't seem to return anything. So can I say has action? I don't even remember what I called that. It was what? Action view? Port static content. Action view? I wonder if that's going to work. Okay, there, clicked it. Aha! And I got array index out of bounds exception. So no intents were captured. Okay, so get intents didn't do what I think it did. I think it should have. Okay, fair enough. Intended. All of. And then has action view. Does that work? Actually, we'll just try one of them. Nope, still didn't like it. So no, again, no intents. Oh, I wonder if it's because I did not set a value in the text field. That would probably be important. Number. Is it number? I think that's what I called it. Yep, ID number. Perform set text. What is it called? Nope. View action. What does it take? View action. Where does the click come from? Click. Click. What methods do I have here in this? Oops. What methods do I have here? I've got clear text, type text. That's what I want. Okay. Type text. Type text. 10. So now let's try it again. Oh, thank you. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm trying to set up my my test. Oh, it worked that time. Okay, so then what do? Well, when I put in a number when I put in the number 10 to my number text field, and I click on double number, then an action is launched. Sorry, an intent is launched that has of action view. I can say all of. So it has an action, and let's see here, has extra of key matcher, so that's number, and the value of number is, I'm going to put this into a field called number, and then number, and I'm going to say has URI. Nope, what is it called? With URI? What's that called? There's an example of it. Oops. Yes. Okay. That's hard to read, but okay. So you can imagine doing this test-driven, I suppose, and maybe that's an okay thing to do. I think this is where it gets a little difficult. Oops, something failed. Zero. What were the recorded intents? Has extras. Bundle number. Oh, the bundle number equals 10. Maybe has extra doesn't work the way I think it should. Oh, okay. You say extras dot contains key or extra string is equal to that. Wow. What? Oh, it has data URI. So wait. Oops. Has data. No. Oh, has data. Null, so there's no URI. Has extra doesn't work the way I think it does. Well, actually, it says has extras, and it says the extra has a bundle of number equals 10. Oh, but here, it should be the number. No, it should not be. Yeah, no, it is. I think I passed it as an int, right? There. Maybe that's it. Hey, it worked. Son of a gun. So this is me sort of figuring out how to use these validation APIs, right? So what have I done here? Okay, so I simulate. Oh, actually, no, I don't simulate. I do. I type in. As a matter of fact, if we go and look at the emulator, let's just watch the emulator as it goes by. So I'm running it now. It brings up my application, types in 10, clicks the button, right? We'll do it again so we can see it. Brings my application 10, clicks the button, displays it, and that's it. And it captured the intent, and then inserted some information that yes, the intent has all of, or an intent is fired that has an action of view, has a null data, and has an extra of 10. And so now I can test this one aspect of my program. Right? This is good, right? So now I can make sure that my main activity is doing the right thing. So anyway, so that's how you can test an intent. Be sure to fix this stuff. Let's see here. Added examples of Espresso tests, including working with widgets and capturing intents. Neat. Okay. During break, you asked me a question about what's it like in the real world, or what do you want me to? What can I help you with? What can I answer? Okay. So let's see here. Well, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I could talk for a long time.
Tell us everything you've ever learned in software.
Everything I've ever learned.
In one sentence.
Ask good questions, but only ask them once.
You
So,
have to ask it more than once. Is it a bad question?
well, no, but here's the thing. So, yeah, now I've been doing this for a long time. It's kind of hard for me to remember exactly what it was like starting out, and and actually, well, so when I think back to like the very first like software engineering job I had, I mean, I was an intern when I was in college, and so then literally I had like whatever 2 semesters a year, not even an academic year of computer science under my belt. I knew Pascal barely. I didn't know anything about Unix, right? But it's like, okay, great. I found myself in this environment where it was like, oh, I'm working with professional engineers, and they're working on compilers. And I had a guy who, like, later it turned out like he's like on the standards committee for C++. Like, showed me, here's how you use C. Here's what like pound pragma is all about. Here's how all that, how the C preprocessor worked. And I guess what was so cool about that is that I realized that while you learn a lot in college, that first on-the-job experience, you learn even more. And so then, my internships, I learned, well, certainly like those first couple, because after my first couple years, we didn't write out a lot of required undergraduate courses and stuff like that. I learned so much more about programming and languages and software engineering, and then also just the day-to-day work, right? So it's like you got to figure out how to organize your time. Got to get your butt to work on time. You need to be engaged. You need to stay, awake during the day. All those kinds of things. Where it's different from this, right? Now, I mean, I'm guessing this is Portland State. A lot of you have workaday experience. You know what it's like to hold down a job, although maybe not an office job, or maybe not a job with the kinds of both constraints and freedoms that you have in software engineering. So, but before I go into like what you need to do to once you're there, let me tell you about how to get there. So when I go to hire people that are fresh out of school, what I want to hear is your stories of mainly identifying and overcoming adversity, especially like academically or like in this kind of setting where stories about how you have dealt with ambiguity. Like the assignments here, right? So, you've had to ask good questions. You had to try things and like, oh, wow, I thought the professor wanted that, but it turns out he wanted something else. And so here's how I was able to understand, what he or she really wanted and how to adapt my implementation appropriately. Because guess what? That happens in the real world too. It happens way more often, right? In the real world, you never solve the same problem multiple times. It's not like where, here I've given this assignment, many, many times. You've probably seen similar assignments in your courses. So, if you can demonstrate that you have the self-organizational skills, the analytical skills, the research skills to be able to navigate something like this, right? That's a good sign. And this is why like things like grades matter. This is why things like companies want to know what you've done. And of course, it's also then challenging as a student to distinguish yourself from your other students, and that's where something outside of school, whether it's a club or as a class, whether it's a club, whether it's an internship, whether it's an open source project that you're working on, those kinds of things will help you. But as I think a good company will look first and foremost at your academic record, and unless you're doing something really, really awesome outside, the fact that like, oh, I contributed to an open source project is probably a nice little bonus. First and foremost, you need to demonstrate that you can navigate this well, because even though it's not exactly like the real world, the whole idea is that this is supposed to give you enough of a challenge to let you learn and make mistakes in what is a safe environment where you're not going to lose your job, you're not going to cause harm to other people because you're working in an academic environment. So anyway, that's how you get there, and then once you're there, I think so. It's interesting. I've worked with people who are early in their careers that are both like overconfident and underconfident. So there's there's the hotshot that think that they know everything, and they might know a lot of stuff. They might have a lot of experience, but then that sort of realizing there's like what you don't know is important and can also be kind of soul crushing at times. Where it's like, I think I got this. It's like, yeah, my code's awesome. And then someone else takes a look at it and it's like, nope, it's not. And here's why. And you're like, oh. And how that happens to all of us and sometimes happens to all of us quite regularly. How you react to that, how you respond to that, how you engage or don't engage matters. And I think these are the kinds of, lack of a better word, coping mechanisms that you need to develop early in your career. And so then how to get feedback from other people, how to process that, how to then figure out what the goal is, how to approach that goal, do the research. Those are in very broad strokes, right, are the kinds of meta skills that you need to bring to your career. That'll help you navigate the organization you're in, and sometimes that means navigating yourself out of that organization if it's not the if it's not the kind of company that you really want to keep company with. So I guess another thing that I've learned, I've been at this long enough to realize that the skills, there are some skills that you are learning now that you will serve you your entire career. Certainly some of the soft skills that you're learning now, whether it's communication, whether it's analytical skills, but some of the hard skills too, right? It's good to know how to use Unix and a command line because of the productivity that it gives you. Early in my career and earlier sort of like just life-wise in my career, looking back on it now, it's like, oh wow, I didn't have a family to go home to at 6 o'clock at night, so I could stay at 8 o'clock at night and write code really inefficiently because I had the time. And I got married, I had kids, I don't have the time anymore, and so then what I had to do is learn to be more efficient in how I process information and how I do my work, everything from reading an email to how I communicate with people. I think one of the things that I've realized that in order to justify my ever-increasing salary, I need to be better at what I do. And one of the ways I get better is that I become more efficient. So something that used to take me, 2 hours, now I gotta get done in 15 minutes. I can't afford to write unclear emails because if I cut corners, it ends up costing me more time because instead of getting instead of achieving clarity in one communication, I'd have to do over 5 communications. And that just wastes everybody's time, especially my own. So it's things like that. And this is super high level and something that may not resonate with you right now. But anyway, this is what I found is important in in navigating the real world. So unfortunately, it's not just about learning a programming language. It's going to get you through your entire career. Those days are long, long gone. It's not like just learning one operating system or going super deep into one thing. It's not like IBM is going to hire you when you're 19 and you're going to retire when you're 62. Anyway, that just doesn't happen. It happens to very few people, and it's probably not how you should optimize and arrange your career. Answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I'm always happy to pontificate about this stuff. I get to talk about myself. Oh, she was. Yeah. Yeah.
In your experience, would you say things that we learned in this class might be translate better into a career than learning how to implement a linked list or something like that?
Definitely.
Well, learning linked lists is very important to your career because that's the question they're going to ask you in your interview. Don't work for that company. Yeah, I know, right? I think it's important to things like understanding and implement how to implement a linked list, or appreciating the fact that in Lisp you can write quicksort in one line of code. Oh, isn't that nice? Are you ever going to use that? Probably not. And as far as what you learn in this class. The Java language, these days, odds are you won't be writing in Java. But what I try to, and that's why I evolved the course to being more about advanced programming than programming in Java, right? And so then what I'm hoping that through using the Java language, through using the Java frameworks and all the testing and stuff like that, we can, you can sort of see a bigger lesson, which is how to write code, how to make sure it's good code, that it works well, and evolve it over time. So that's sort of the big lesson here. And the way I assess how you've learned that is by having you do these projects, having you do the quizzes, things like that, which then are more about the more tactical things than the higher order concepts.
The unit testing aspect of this class alone is worth it.
Oh, thank you. I think unit testing is something that's really important, and something that isn't naturally taught yet. I think it is in some places. You look at some other curriculums where they're a little bit more experimental and stuff, and they talk about test-driven development because I think it makes sense I think it really clicks with some people. But certainly it's in the grand scheme of things. I mean, it's only become mainstream in the last 15 years, and these days computing's been around for 60, 75, yeah, let's just say 60 years, right? So yeah, so it's still something that's pretty new, and so I hope it's something that like you and your generation will will just do first because I think it has benefits, and we're no longer constrained by having super slow machines. Machines are really fast, and so we can afford to write more code and write it quicker than we used to.
And in a production environment, you guarantee that things are not going to break, and you need to have confidence in refactoring. Like if you're going to work for a company that doesn't have a testing policy, that you probably shouldn't. And like in at least from my experience, this is the first time that we're really exposed to PSU to unit testing, because PSU focuses a lot on the computer science aspect and not in the software engineering aspect of things, which doesn't really transpose into a work experience, because you can know like about algorithms and stuff like that, but your day-to-day is probably not going to be doing something.
There are jobs where you do algorithms all day,
Sure.
but most of them aren't. And I'm guessing that for most of you, your passions are otherwise, and that's why I'm glad they let me teach this course, so that I can do something that is is relevant to you personally, and then also just in general, exposing you to concepts that you might not see otherwise. I guess another thing that I've come to appreciate is that my time as a student, the older I get, is less and less of my life. So it was the point where like, wow, those 6 years, when I was 24, that was a quarter of my life. Wow, but I was that was like a big chunk. And now that number stays the same, where I was like a professional student versus like now that I've spent. I guess it's true. I've spent more time being a practitioner than I did any kind of student. From age 6 to age whatever that was, 24. So that's given me a different perspective on sort of like what I did as a student, and so I can just I guess now I can forgive those professors that made me memorize a bunch of stuff and learn about like big O notation and all that crap. Where it's like, okay, fine, I sort of get it. It's not something that I've used, but okay, that yes, I will never have those, whatever it was, 12 weeks of my life back again, but it was only 12 weeks. I've lived a lot more than that, so, yeah. Other things, take care of yourself. So, what you do with your mind, what you do with your body, what you put into your mind, what you put into your body is important. I've sort of decided that I want to be in this for the long run, and so that means not only keeping my computer skills sharp and my my work skills sharp, but also making sure that I'm healthy enough to enjoy it and to deal with the stresses of work and life, because those are certainly out there, and and that's another thing that sounds strange. As I've gotten older, all those cliches about middle age, it's true. There's a reason everybody thought Golden Girls was so funny. It's like, oh my gosh, that's reality. Okay, fine. Anyway, so other things to be thinking about in terms of navigating your career, but just also navigating your life. We'll do some more code. So we've done some more testing. Someone was asking about files and stuff, and so I think I want to walk through that. And one of the things I've realized about this main activity is that it is super hodgepodge. So there's not a lot of cohesion here, and so like I apologize. It was mainly like me, hey, here's a demonstration on getting something to work. I added another piece of functionality, which demonstrates files, and it's kind of a, oops, I ran the test. I didn't want to run the test. I want to run the app. And it's kind of a hokey example, so maybe there's a better way to do it. This date right here is the date that the application was last displayed. So here it is, Wednesday, August 7th at 7:23:57. So if I then click to go to the background, and then I bring it to the foreground, it gets updated. Actually, it's not very easy to say. It's very see now. It's 24:10, and now if I go and I go back, it's now 24:32. And this is written to a file. And the reason it gets that, so I can how do I do that? How do I unload the app? Well, I can kill the app. I can bring it back. One. Actually, can I add that to the home screen? How do I do that? There we go. I can bring it back. Everything else is cleared, but it still remembers this number, or still remembers this date, because it's written to a file. So let's take a look at how we write that to a file. Yes, question.
Like real quick, so when we're doing the dates, is it cool if we do it like just a long string for the date, like we did in the browser for the rest point, basically?
By do the dates, you mean input or pretty print?
Yeah, like, can we just do like one string with the timing?
Oh, a string. It's fine to input the dates and times as a string. Yeah.
Just like one long string.
One long string is fine because we're not talking about that many characters, right? So it probably fit on the screen pretty nicely. Yeah, and so, or if you want to like break up into multiple fields, whatever. If you want to use some sort of fancy widget, give it a try. Let's here again for me, the sort of the bar that I'm looking at everybody to jump over is can I look at your app? Can I understand how to use it? Can I use it and does it work correctly? So here again, if it's like it's got an interaction which doesn't seem natural, like maybe the fields run out of order, or there's like some trick to it that isn't obvious, you'll probably lose some points for that. And certainly if it doesn't work, you'll lose some points for that. Let's see here, display text from file. We probably want to look at that. Yeah. Actually, sorry, there's one more thing. I wonder if I can. Oh, how do I want to blow away that file. Let's see here, what does this do? Attach to an Android process. I bet what I need to do is I need to run my first Android application, Gradle, what was that? Uninstall all? So by uninstall all, this like blows away the app. Nope, what doesn't it like? No device is connected. Well, okay, fine. I'll launch the emulator. Oh wait, sorry, I'm going to do that thing again so that I can edit the configuration. I'm going to edit the app. Do not make me choose. Always do that. I'm going to run it. It's running. Now I'm going to uninstall. Good. Now it's gone. So now I'm going to do is I'm going to run it under the debugger again. And so brand new fresh install, I have to deploy it again. But now it shouldn't have that file anymore. Okay. So my main activity is starting up. And it's going to display the text from a file. So it's going to, there's a text view, which is the text that is to be displayed. Okay, now I'm going to get a file. So there were some questions about this on Slack, and so then what seemed to be the most reasonable thing to do is use something called internal storage. And the way you get internal, so every app, remember I was talking about Android applications and how they are run as their own user, kind of like in their own process space and stuff. They also have like their own little file system, and so it was interesting. One of the things when I was writing is I debugged. Actually, maybe I can do it. I can do it right here. I think I can say. Sorry, I'm like getting ahead of myself. So I was curious. It's like, hey, what is the current working directory for the Android application? Right, because I mean it's a Java program, or it's got to run some directory, right? And so the way you find that is by looking at user.dir, is that right? Yeah, there's a slash, and so then let's see here. But I don't have permission to look at that. Can I say list files. It gets null, probably because I don't have permission. So anyway, so it runs in the slash directory, in its like own little view of the file system. But you can't work with any of the files there. The whole idea is that there's like a subset of files that you're allowed to use. And the way you access that, the way you get this internal storage, is you say get application context.get files. And then this gives you the root of the dir. Sorry, get files dir. That's what it's called. Oops, I didn't want to toggle breakpoint. What did I want to do? I wanted to evaluate, which is Alt F8. And so then this is inside your process is a directory called /data/user/0, and that's yep. And then the name of your application, essentially your package name /files. And this is a place where you can put files associated with your application. So we'll do that. We'll create a file called file.txt. File.txt does not exist yet, correct? Let me look at that. File.exist, false, does not exist. So okay, cool. Oh, I'm using this files. I'm sorry, I'm using this path API. Oops, what did I just hit? Must have hit. Oops. Run the cursor. There we go. So it does not exist. So I'll just say, hey, the program hasn't been run yet. That's all I use for my text. And then I'm going to write into it a single line, which is the current date, which is the new date, current timestamp, and go from there. So then, oops, I don't need this breakpoint anymore because we're not looking at that code. And so now the first thing it says is this program hasn't been run yet. Okay, so basically this is Bootstrap again. Oh look, the file doesn't exist. This is the first thing I'm going to run. So now when I stop it and I restart it, on start is invoked. So this is the lifecycle method. Oh, my activity is starting again. Now I'll display text from file again. I will. Oops, I don't need this breakpoint. I'll go get my file. This time my file does exist. I'll read all the lines. There's only one line in it. I'll put them all together into a big long piece of text, which is down here, I guess. Text is the current time. We'll set that, and then we'll take a new timestamp, write that to the file. It just blows it away, what's ever there, and then we'll continue. And there it is. So there's really no magic in this, other than the fact that, oh, there's just one directory that is your internal storage, and you use that to write stuff to. So what I encourage you to do is leverage things like your text writer that you've been using since Project 2 to save the contents of your appointment books to the file system. So again, not a lot of magic there. You see to do like the one right API to call, which is this get application context get files dir, and that's the directory that you can write to.
And when should you write to the file on destroy?
Oh, like we're in the lifecycle? Well, I mean, probably once you make a modification to your appointment book. So it's like, oh, I've had an appointment. Great, right off to the file.
So not just when the application is done.
Probably not, right? I think you want it to persist, even if, yeah. So probably in the real world, you'd want to do it sort of asynchronously or whatever in the background. Don't worry about that here. But I think, conceptually, you want to do it whenever your data is modified. Unless you want to have some notion of a transaction where it's like, oh, I'm going to add 3 appointments. Oh, wait, cancel all those 3. But I don't think you probably do, right? It's like just add one at a time, like your command line tool, like when you use Project 2 or whatever, right? Every time you invoke the Project 2 main, you add one more appointment, so it's saved every time.
I'm going to get into the details a little bit, but
Okay.
you're going to have an appointment book, and then you're going to have an appointment, and then you add an appointment. And so you're 3 intents deep, right? And then you save one appointment there. So if you want to dump the whole appointment book, you'd have to be 3 activities back.
No, I mean it might be.
Because if you do save a new appointment and you use the intent to put extra on, put parcel or whatever you need, and you save that, then you don't know the whole appointment book unless you pass it everywhere, unless you're always tossing that around.
Well, I don't know if you can toss the entire appointment book around. I mean, so for instance, I could imagine that your first activity is going to be the one where you either select an appointment book or you create a new one. Okay, and so let's say and you could decide or not decide whether or not. So in project, so interestingly enough, in the command line applications, you could never have an appointment book with 0 appointments. You can change that here. I don't care, right? Because every time that you couldn't create an appointment book without also adding an appointment to it, right? So you can never have an empty one. You can have one now. So I think it'll make your app a little simpler if you could. Okay, so you've created an appointment and activity knows that. You've created an appointment book, so maybe it knows its owner, and so then there's a way to add an appointment to it. Okay, and then you go off to the add appointment. It's really not until you add the appointment that you really need to save it. This may need some logic to say, oh, it's the first time I'm saving an appointment, create a new appointment book, and put it in there and save all that off. But I don't think you need to pass a tremendous amount of data around. Probably the only thing you need to pass between activities is the owner, is a currently selected owner. And you could put that could be in your URI even. Is that making sense at all?
Yeah, it doesn't work for me in my case.
Okay, so what is your
Because the thing that you were saying, but then when you're on the appointments list of each owner, for me to add an appointment, I have a new activity. So if I add that activity there.
Oh, I see, because if you're viewing the appointments, you'll also need to read it from disk. And this is kind of interesting. Probably the right way to do this is to have some sort of service that serves it all and stuff. And maybe that's something that is reasonable to figure out in a couple of hours. I don't know. But otherwise, if you have to read it and write it a bunch of times, it's not going to be the end of the world for this class. It's probably not the way you do it for real. But, here again, the most important thing is to get to work. If you do some things that are a little ugly, get to work ugly, and then maybe look, I got a couple of it's you get all that working on Monday, and it's like great, I've committed everything to GitHub, and maybe I want to play around a little bit more. Go figure out how to start a service, something like that.
So is the reason you don't want to do one read and write because if it crashes, might lose data, or?
No, it's probably more about just the overhead of reading and writing. But here again, it's so small what you're doing. I don't think it's going to make any difference. Here again, one thing kind of caution you about is because it's a small device, because you're using somebody's data plan, because you're taking up CPU and you're using battery, you need to be cognizant of this stuff in the real world.
I was thinking the opposite, doing one write instead of writing every time you add an appointment. So basically making it more efficient.
Appending it, appending it to the file or something like that instead of.
On a command line program, it would basically when you close the program, it would write to the disk.
Yeah.
So kind of like that when you close the app, it would write. Is there a reason against
that? I guess it's not really over. So there's kind of the notion of the user interaction and the user transaction, right? And so then what does the user expect after they've clicked create appointment? Probably that appointment is there and persistent. If you were dealing with a web service or something, so let's say that your Android app actually dealt with your REST API from Project 4, I suppose all the logic is taken care of on the server unless you want to cache everything locally and then write it out, which maybe you'd want to do, but probably not, right? Just like with your email app or whatever. If you're online, you want to have some sort of synchronization with the master copy. So anyway, these are up to you. These are good design decisions and discussions and stuff. I don't know if there's necessarily a right or wrong, or there's a better or worse, but it's it's options that you have. Nice, yeah.
What else happens with each text file represents different equivalence file? Like we have, say.
Well, yes. I mean that's what happened in your project 4, right? In your project 2, right? You can only have one owner per text file, and so if you use that same implementation, yes, you can have multiple. If you have since you have multiple appointment books, you'll have multiple text files. So you can just put them all there in that same directory.
Oh yeah, I was also thinking you could do it with text file, but then you'd have to write some statements to specific.
You could. I'm not going to look at it. But then you have to change your parser, right? Yeah.
So for your grading and testing purposes, you're basically just going to open the app, try to make some appointments, and see that it makes sense, and then that's it.
Yeah. So it's I'll deploy it to the emulator. I'll poke around. I'll put in some invalid data and make sure that you can. Just the same thing I do with the command line, right? I do stupid stuff that you didn't expect, and I look at your README, and then I'll do stuff that ought to work.
But it'll take you a lot longer.
It'll take me a lot longer. Yeah, I know, right? This is why I make the graders grade the final exam. Yeah. Cool. What else? Is there anything else for tonight?
I think I know everything there is to know about Java.
Great. Mission accomplished. We'll see you next week. Now, won't we? I don't know.
I'm putting a final exam for next week.
Yeah.
How's it gonna be formatted?
Oh, good. I talked about it in the first 5 minutes of class.
I guess I missed it.
So I mean, just real quick, you study for it. But okay, open book, open notes. So print out stuff. There'll be some written questions along the lines of the quizzes, that same kind of format. It's a short answer. So they're going to be writing essays. You're not going to be. You might need to know APIs. Maybe writing some code, but you won't be writing big pages of code or anything dumb like that. No electronic devices.
Is it 10 questions or something? What was on the quizzes?
It's along the lines of what was on the quizzes.
Oh,
It's worth, yes,
I think it's 13% or something.
it's 12.
Oh, wow.
So we could just print off all your lecture notes and bring that.
You can. Yep.
But no electronic.
Yes, please don't. Yeah, because I can't tell if you're there, dear Facebook friends or whatever. It's, so I don't know. Your grandma might know a lot about Java. I don't know.
And then,
Yeah.
what's the format of the final going to be like?
Written.
That's weird.
Yeah.
So besides the injection stuff, what else will be on there? Will we be covering the functional stuff? The
No.
basic.
It's the stuff that. So I think it's most fair to assess the stuff that you sort of dealt with in your assignments. So the stuff earlier in the course is emphasized more than the stuff later in the course. In that, that's not exactly true. There's there's more density. So for instance, the fundamental Java stuff like objects and some of the language stuff and some of the core APIs, I expect you to know that in more detail than stuff about Android or REST, because you've had more experience using that, right? So yeah. Yep.
So for the final project, does the date and time, does the user have to enter the date and time using a keypad, or can they use a time picker, date picker?
Up to you. So as long as I can figure out how to use it, so as long as it's not some sort of sundial or crap, right? Hey, I don't know. So yeah, try not to be too tricky. Yeah, that would be pretty cool, a sundial, and then anyway, it's oh no, it's 11 o'clock at night, I can't create it. Yeah, so here again, as long as I can figure out. So yeah, I encourage you to use things like date pickers and time wheels or whatever they're called. But yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, I think we're done then. So, I'll see you next week. And you and everybody else. It's going to be so hilarious. This room is going to be packed. There are going to be people who we haven't seen in 8 weeks. It'll be sign my yearbook, man. It's yeah, anyway. I'll see you then.